Hello YouTube, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're doing well. Today's going to be a really awesome video. We're going to be looking at different kind of decks in Lorcana, giving you a guide to what each color does, what people have already come up with, and what kind of works. I'm of the people that like to look at what's doing well and maybe take that deck and copy it and add a little bit of me into it. We're going to be looking at what people have come up with, what does well, what kind of play style these decks have, just to help you guys get into the game and decide what deck you want to play. Getting close to 1,000 subscribers, which I'll do a massive giveaway if and when that happens. Please subscribe. I'm going to look at all the colors and give us a good understanding of what can work well when they're paired up, because you can only use two colors. I think you can go mono one color, but maximum you can choose two colors, two color inks to play. Amber is going to be the first one. Focuses on healing, which is not particularly a strong part of the meta game, meta referring to competitive play, but it's a fun niche idea that you can take to your locals and play uncompetitively. However, it doesn't have very strong application when it comes to competitive play, other than Rapunzel drawing lots of cards. And they also like songs. There's lots of songs. I think Ariel kind of makes the song line very, very competitive because she's a very good card, especially becoming a singer. So lots of singers and lots of song action cards for the amber color. Didn't go in massive depth with these. Some of them have more than the others, and steel kind of just likes to do damage, so it can do a spread of damage to each character, or it can target damage to a character. So a lot of the actions and songs do damage, a lot of the items can do damage, and a lot of the characters on play or questing do damage, or when they get banished do damage. So very damage heavy color. So for example, if you paired it up with amber, you could be singing songs that do damage. That's why we have those two colors working well in the meta. Emerald have cards that involve discarding. They like to bounce opponents' characters. They also like to give opponents stuff reckless, which means they have to challenge if able. But that's quite a niche, less competitive strategy, which is really, really fun when you're not playing competitive. So if you're playing at your locals, playing a green reckless build is quite fun. Some of the songs are quite good. Ursula is a emerald and basically double sings cards, which is very, very good. If you're pairing up emerald with any other deck, you're looking to either bounce your opponent's stuff or discard your opponent's stuff, and then if you added the steel cards doing damage as well, makes it quite a good control based strategy. Ruby has a lot on offer. We have Rush and Reckless cards. Rush in particularly goofy. He likes to gain lore on Rush, and another thing, gaining lore and losing lore is something that they do. We have lots of big removals and small removals such as Brawl and Be Repaired. You've got big moss monsters as well, like Maleficent Dragon, removal on play, Medusa and Lady Tremaine. Ruby is a very heavy removal, big boss monster color. Amethyst has a great deal of effects. They like to bounce themselves, such as like the Madam Mim and Merlin cards, and gain effects. They like to exert the opponent's things, which will mean tapping them so they can be available to challenge. And what I've noticed is they have a lot of characters that have inbuilt actions that are very similar to all the other colors. So for example, if we go through some of the Merlin cards, you've got draw, you've got gain lore, and so that's a bit of a theme in Amethyst. They kind of take a few ideas from other ink colors and put them into some of the characters. Last one is Sapphire, and Sapphire is been making its rounds based on the competitive play being in pretty much everyone's decks. It has the draw, it has gaining lore, and it has the ink ramp. An ink ramp means instead of playing one ink, you can play 2 ink in your turn or 3 ink in your turn, basically giving you a position to play bigger, higher costing cards a lot early in your round, a lot earlier than usual, which for me, a little bit broken because it has the draw and the ink together in one color. I think that should have been separated. That's why Sapphire is in lots of different decks. That's all the inks. Let's just go through some playstyles. Let's go through some playstyles that you might consider playing. I'm gonna give you some positives and some negatives about these playstyles. What's really, really good is there's no best playstyle, there's no best deck, even though Sapphire Ruby is running away with it at the moment. Aggro is quite an easy strategy that I think lots of new players should play. What you want to do is quest as quick as possible. You are going from 0 to 20 in very few rounds, and you're not going to be using much ink. Your 1-drops might have 2 or 3, or 2-drops will have 2 or 3, and if you go really, really wide, meaning if you get lots of characters down, then you can win really quickly. A lot of your characters are going to be low ink. There's no room for anything else, so you're not going to be running any removal cards, because that's a waste of time. You want to be going straight for it, straight for the throat, trying to win without worrying about what your opponent's doing. The whole idea is win as quick as possible. The reason why I think this is a good playstyle is it beats the best decks in the room at the moment. However, the weakness is if you play against the mid-range decks, they will probably beat you. They have a lot of ways to deal with your early game. They have a lot of ways to remove your little characters that quest for loads and that don't have much ink, because these characters won't have much strength. They can remove those cards through actions and songs. Traditionally, Amber Amethyst was the go-to aggro deck. However, recently, because of newer set cards coming out, the Amber Emerald is a hot contention for being the best aggro deck. People are playing Sapphire Steel, Amethyst Steel, and Amber Steel aggro decks. Lots of steel, and simply because they have the options to do damage nice and early. One other suggestion, if you'd like to play aggro, you can build locations aggro, so they're a lot harder to deal with, especially if the meta involves Sapphire Ruby with their slower build-up play and trying to win the game. They're really good at removing your little characters. Not so with the locations. That can be a very good strategy to win games. Mid-range decks have the best of both worlds. They do have options to play wide with the aggro cards, and they have options to play removal cards, so keeping some element of control. It can lure, it can remove, and it can set up decent boards to be able to play late game. It keeps the aggro decks in check, so if you feel like you're going to be going to an event that has lots of aggro, this is such a good idea to play. I'm a bit of a mid-range player. It's a fun way to play because it plays differently. So if you're playing against aggro, you want to be trying to control what they're doing. If you're playing against control, you want to be playing a complete different ball game. You want to be playing aggressively, trying to quest. Maybe you're playing discards, you're trying to discard everything out of their hand. It makes the playstyle a little bit flexible, and I like it because with aggro, you just got one job, and it can get quite boring after a while. So mid-range is a very fun place to be. It definitely involves you being quite reactive to what you're playing against. So when you find out what you're playing, that you're playing against aggro, you've got to react to it in a different way to control. Unfortunately, this deck has a big weakness, and it is the big blowout cards. And what I mean by that is if someone slams down a Be Prepared, it wipes your board, you might not have much left to go from that. The last one is the control variant, which are the best decks in the room at the moment in terms of representation in meta tournaments. We've got Steel Sapphire and we've got Sapphire Ruby, or Ruby Sapphire. So both are item-based decks that involve drawing loads of cards with the Sapphire and inking loads of cards with the Sapphire, and then the Steel and the Ruby are the ones that are keeping things under control to get to the point where you can slam down a Tamatoa and Lucky Dime and just quest for loads. And it requires a lot of setup to the point where it's quite a difficult deck to play because you have to know your curve, your mulligan needs to be perfect, trying to keep the aggro decks in check. Lots of decisions have to be made each turn, whereas like aggro is like, oh, 2 lore, 2 ink, tap them, 2 1-drops, pass turn. And the Steel and the Ruby, along with the inking and drawing, just covers all the basis of removing anything and everything. So both Ruby and Steel can just remove all your aggro cards. If they don't end up winning quick enough with aggro, then there comes a point where you're like on 18, 19 lore, and then the Ruby and Steel cards will just wipe you out. And obviously Sapphire, all the ramp just helps you be able to play these bigger cards. So Tamatoas can come down really early. The Flavishin can come down like a turn 3 if it's had a bit of ramp from like Tipo or One Jump Ahead, and then having that Hopsicle to draw 2 cards. It's like just so much advantage, so much hand draw, so many options to play, and they can fix your hands too if you've kind of bricked. It requires a lot of setup, so it means your game's going to go on a lot longer. And so if you can do that, go to big tournaments or set championships where you're going to be playing a few rounds and you feel comfortable playing a long grindy game, then the control decks are for you. I hope this is good for any players that are getting into the game or any players who are thinking of playing competitively. If you like this kind of content, please let me know, and yeah, I will see you in the next one. See you later.